What's up everyone, Chris Osberg here, Winding Road Magazine. Today I'm here with the all-new 2017 Chevrolet Bolt electric vehicle. Quite frankly, I'm digging the burnt metallic orange color of this thing. It's definitely a car with character. This is arguably one of the most ambitious and interesting and exciting entries into the electric vehicle arena in a long time. So what we have here is Chevy's first, let's say, legitimate entry into what could be an everyday usable electric car. It has smashed the 200-mile barrier with an EPA rated range of 238 miles. And it is a reasonably priced car that comes in right around upper $30,000 range to start out with, and including the potential savings that you get with the tax credits, it can be right around a $30,000 proposition. Nothing else at that price point can touch it. So there's plenty of other electric vehicles in the market that are hovering right around the 100-mile to 150-mile range mark, but this is the only thing getting any close to getting anywhere near 200 miles, other than a very expensive Tesla that costs probably about 50% as much. So let's go take a look around this thing. Styling wise, it's a stubby little thing. It's very practical. So it's a hatchback, and it's designed to be a small car that has a lot of room on the inside. Popping the trunk. I see if they've thrown in a 120 volt charger for me. I won't be using that, as it would take forever to charge this thing with a 120 volt charger. Better keep that thing for emergency use only. Underneath that, we've got some foam, we've got some carpet, and of course no spare, but got a place to put that charger if we don't need it. So seats fold down flat, decent amount of room in the back. What definitely is impressive is the legroom back here. So for such a small car, you've got quite a bit of room to get your legs and get comfortable back here. This interior is pretty cool. So it's got a kind of a two-tone interior. Got this gray and white thing going on with some red deviated stitching. It's very bold. So you're gonna either love or hate the styling of this thing. Frankly, it's a quirky car, and I'm digging it. It's so geeky, it's kind of cool. Back here, you've got two USB ports. You've got USB ports galore in this car. So these are just charging only. Give you some power to power up your devices. Let's go ahead and see what we got going on under the hood. Right here, charging port. So I'm an engine guy, so this is going to be a foreign world to me. Hey, we've got our AC Delco 12 volt battery. As I've said before, you still need that as a safeguard to energize and de-energize the high voltage battery, which is a whopping 60 kilowatt hours. So it's a big beefy battery in this thing. Everything orange, don't touch it. That's high voltage stuff. Got a couple of different control modules. We've got some cooling circuits. Got some washer fluid you can add in there. Overall, not not user friendly for the shade tree mechanic, but that's, you know, it's just the way the world's going these days. So what else can I say about the Bolt? What is cool about it is the platform itself is based on the battery. So you've got this 900 and some pound battery in the bottom, and they keep saying it's kind of like a skateboard, and you're basically building the whole car on that platform, on the battery itself. That battery is supposed to make up a lot of the value of this car. You're paying a lot for those 60 kilowatt hours. Some estimates say around 22%. And the battery's a stressed member of the frame, meaning the car is literally built around the battery. So what does that mean? What does that do for the consumer? Well, it leads to a very low center of gravity This car for its size is pretty heavy, right around 3,600 pounds. Normally a car in this weight class would be right around 3,000 pounds, if not a little bit less. So it is a fairly heavy car, but that mass is way down low in the frame of the car, where that battery pack is based in the bottom there. And you can really feel it. So that leads to a very firm, solid, planted feeling that you get from the car. And that battery at the bottom there also means that you can do creative things with your packaging, like, you know, it's all flat in there. There's no transmission tunnel. There's no tunnel going down the center of the car. So it's good for packaging. And Tesla was kind of the first to pioneer that whole, you know, build a car off the battery thing. And you can see others are going to be following suit, because frankly, it's just the way to go. So, all right, we got a splash screen as everything fires up here. I've got a whole bunch of different displays telling me different things. Got about a quarter of my battery used up, and it's still telling me I have roughly 144 miles left. We are going to go ahead, hit that glowing blue button, and hey, press the brake. So it won't even turn the quote ignition on unless I got the brake on. So, all right, we'll do what it wants me to do. First impressions, we have a cornucopia of different motifs here. So we've got lots of different materials, different textures, different colors. It's pretty bold, and like I said before, I kind of dig it. It's kind of quirky. It's very futuristic. It's very progressive. It's definitely for the hip tech crowd. If you're, you know, a more classic or understated kind of person, you might find it a little over the top. But you know what? This car is supposed to be out there. This is supposed to be appealing to progressive out there people, and I kind of dig the interior styling of this thing. So we've got a big display here and a smaller cluster in front of us. I have it currently set up to show me the energy use. So we've got our battery pack depicted here, and once I start driving, it's going to show me my energy flow and how it's going from the battery to the electric motor, which is in the front of the car, or under regeneration, it's getting taken from the road and put back into the battery. So that's that. There's a whole bunch of different displays that can show me what's going on with my energy usage. You know, we've got what's going on with energy in terms of it's being used by driving versus a climate control versus a battery conditioning, distance traveled, so it's trip computer type functions, and I can be graded on the economicness or the, you know, battery friendliness of my driving technique. Tells me different factors like the outside temperature and my climate control settings in the terrain, which are taking away from my range. You can see the outside temperature being at 52 degrees is below what's optimal, so it's going to take some of my range away from the car. But overall, it's got lots of different things that Tech Geek is going to be happy with. And it's a pretty responsive system. It doesn't seem to have a lot of delay in it. So we'll go ahead and use that once we're driving. Materials, they seem pretty good. The seats are flat, but they seem to be pretty comfortable. You can see a few places around the car where they've cut up some cost, and you really have to when you consider how much battery you're getting in this car for the price. But overall, the quality of the car and the fit and finish is actually quite good, all things considered. It's not a bad place to be. Aside from, you know, the overload of different colors and textures, it feels like a very well-built car. In contrast to something like a Nissan Leaf, which I really get the feeling I'm in a cheaped-out car when I'm driving that thing. I think this is definitely a step up in overall quality of the vehicle. So we're gonna get buckled up here and take this thing for a spin. One thing, the shifter is definitely not the typical shifter that we are used to. It's one of those new fancy style shifters with some sort of gate logic that a lot of people aren't used to. Frankly, I don't really understand why manufacturers are so hell-bent on giving us new ways to shift a car. I think old tried and true methods are very conditioned to people, and we don't need to go and reinvent the wheel. But on this car, we're left with that. So going to drive is really no big deal. You press a button, pull it back. Reverse is kind of this goofy motion up to neutral and then to the left to get reverse. But there, see, it didn't even do it. So I'm holding the button. I want to go to reverse. All right, there we go. So, yeah, I don't see the necessary reason to do that, but it is what it is. Backup cam works just fine. Looks, you know, about what you get in a $100,000 Cadillac, which is kind of not so good there, but perfectly acceptable in a $30,000-ish electric vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and put it to drive and set off on our way. So as I mentioned before, lots of range out of this thing. 60 kilowatt hour battery, which is pretty substantial. Power comes right in at 200 horsepower and 266 pound-feet of torque, which is a lot for this little thing. So it gets up and moves. Typical electric vehicle fashion, the torque is very smooth, very linear, and absolutely immediate. So and given the front-wheel drive architecture and the low rolling resistance tires, this is one of the few vehicles I've ever driven where I really feel it doesn't need any more power than it has. We can do some testing later, but 0 to 60 should come in right around the 6-second mark. And if this car really had much more power, you'd be overloading the front tires more than they already do. You wouldn't be effectively using that power below, you know, reasonable speeds. And you start to reveal more ugly character traits like torque steer and other things. This thing's got all the power it needs. It's perfect for just pointing and shooting around in the city. So. Go ahead and pull off the side here. Let's turn off all of my nannies. Traction control is off, stability track's off. Let's find a break in traffic here. See what kind of acceleration we get. All right, here we go. So on the highway, wind noise is pretty subdued given the shape of the car. The drag coefficient is pretty decent, right around 0.30. It's not a bad car on the highway. You do feel a little bit of quivering in terms of directional stability because it is a short wheelbase car with a lot of side area. Ride quality is smooth, but I do have a minor complaint, and it could be a personal preference issue. But the combination of a very low center of gravity with that low mounted battery and the substantial weight of the vehicle and the short wheelbase leads to some chassis dynamics that feel a little bit, let's say, porpoisey. Yeah, it's got this pitch thing. It kind of pitches back and forth over these broken Michigan roads, and it's not comfortable to my stomach. So if you live in an area with rough roads, I definitely suggest you try the car out in terms of how it rides and see what you think. But on smooth roads, it's good. It has a very good ride, but on broken roads, it bounces around quite a bit, and that might not be avoidable. We're dealing with this substantial car with a very short wheelbase, and that leads to things that are difficult to take care of. Okay, so you can see an indicator there. I've moved the shifter to actually what's called the L, or the low setting. And what that has done is increase the regenerative braking effort. So now I can drive this thing really with 1 foot. I hardly ever have to use the friction brakes. And that's what I prefer when driving a fully electric car, or even a hybrid. I prefer to have the maximum amount of regenerative braking and simply drive the car by going on and off the throttle pedal or the accelerator pedal. And this is a way to maximize the energy you get back from your regenerative braking. It's kind of fun. It's a different way to drive compared to what most people are used to. Also got a sport mode button. Sport mode is now on. Got some basic cup holders here in the front. They don't have any sort of gripping mechanism, no adjustability. They're just there, but you know, being there is probably better than not being there. So another complaint about the shifter is sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find the right gear, especially when selecting reverse. So it's kind of a hokey pokey of foot on the brake, hit the button. It doesn't always go on the first try. Of course it did that time, but if you don't get the timing just right, and you hit the button first, then the brake, and then over to neutral, sometimes it doesn't go as quickly as you'd want it to. I've had situations where I tried to engage reverse and I did something wrong with the process. There we go. See? Hold button to shift, and I am holding the button, and it doesn't want to shift to reverse right now, so I got to do the process again. So the multiple step in order to engage reverse, I don't agree with that. I think it should be a simple one move to select a gear, and you should know it's in gear. You shouldn't be guessing that it's in gear, because it requires a lot of concentration. I can maybe understand that they're trying to make it a very conscious effort to select something like reverse, but it goes from something that's second nature to something that you're not 100% reliable, or you don't 100% believe that it's going to go every time into the gear that you select. And I really don't like that feeling. So that's something that's not specific to this car, but some of these new shifter concepts in general. As we're coming to a stop here at the light, a couple more notes on the infotainment system and the functionality. For a car that's really marketed towards tech-savvy, progressive people that are in tune with technology, that enjoy to use technology, one glaring oversight on the infotainment system is a lack of native map-based navigation. So the car doesn't have a navigation system built into it, which I'm really surprised, and there's none available. What you can do is you can use CarPlay or Android Auto, which isn't a bad option, but really not as easy or quick to get going as if the car had its own native navigation system. I kind of see that as a cop-out. You also have the subscription-based OnStar system, which you can use to get yourself turn-by-turn navigation, but once again, subscription-based and not something that seems all that appealing. I would really like to see an option to have a fully contained map-based navigation system in the car, and that opens up other functionality as well as you know, integration with charging stations and other things that you'd be interested in as an EV driver. So not sure why that was omitted. I'm sure they had a reason for it, whether it was, you know, justified or not. I can't answer to that, but I would really like to see, especially if you want to compete with the likes of Tesla, who have a Google Earth based or you know, a really nice display and a really nice navigation system. This car definitely needs it. It's something that it should have. Also, the Bose premium audio system, although it was not expensive, it was only about $500 baked in with some other options. It's not all that great for a premium audio system. It's okay, but it's certainly nothing to write home about. But once again, you're not paying a whole lot for it. Otherwise, it's a pretty useful system with a lot of functionality, and the display is nice. The speed of how the system responds is usually pretty good. It could just use a few more things, like the navigation option would be very welcome. I'm sure in an effort to keep costs down, the offer structure and the package options that you have for this car are very limited. So you have 2 trim levels and you have only a small handful of options that fit within those trim levels. And that's really to cut down on complexity. So when you have a battery powered electric vehicle with a huge battery pack at the lowest price you can possibly achieve, and frankly, they're probably still not achieving profit with this car. Everything that you can do to reduce complexity and manufacturing costs is going to be absolutely necessary to make it a business model worth continuing. So you really don't have a lot of options to choose from in this thing. But that's okay, because the basic car has most of the things you need, with, as I mentioned before, the really major oversight of not offering a navigation system. But to be quite honest, the take rate for navigation systems across most cars isn't that high. I imagine it might be a little bit higher on a technology-oriented car like a battery electric vehicle, but generally, a lot of customers don't choose navigation at the $35,000, $38,000, $40,000 price point. So I'm sure a lot of people will still be happy without navigation. Another interesting note is that when you are in low, you no longer have any sort of creeping functionality with the car. You let off the brake, and the car is not going to inch forward. If you put it back into drive, then it creeps pretty much like a regular car. And I think that's kind of the point they were going after, is you drive the car in D, it feels very much like a regular internal combustion car in terms of driving dynamics and how the brakes and the gas and everything interface, how overrun is. And your more EV oriented users are going to want to stick it into L and maximize that regenerative braking potential. But one cool feature it does have is if you're in D and you let off the gas completely, the car will basically freewheel. There won't be much regenerative braking going on. But what you can do is you can pull the left shift paddle, and that will greatly increase the amount of regenerative braking when you're in the D mode, and you can recuperate some of that energy without being in the L mode. So it's kind of on demand for the regenerative braking. So freewheeling, freewheeling, freewheeling. There's the regen spinning around there, and the car slows down. It's a cool feature, but I see myself using L mode more likely than using the paddle, because you really can use the accelerator pedal to modulate the acceleration and deceleration versus the paddle, which is either on or off. So around town, the responsiveness right around the 25 to 40 miles per hour speed range is just, it's pretty awesome, actually. You put the accelerator down in the car, it just responds instantly. There's a little bit of damping on the torque delivery, but overall it puts you right back in the seat. There's no downshifting. It's a single speed transmission, so there's really no delay and hesitation getting the power down. So it's kind of fun to just roll along at 30 miles an hour and just zings right up there. So infotainment system, it's got some positive and negative things to it. On the positive side, the display is halfway decent. It's not up to the level of the massive display you'd find on a Tesla, but it's also not a Tesla's price. The system's pretty responsive. You don't get a lot of lag out of it. And they do have a nice assortment of physical buttons for the frequently used items that really are doing better with a physical tactile device. So you got your volume and your power and your temperature for your climate control and a couple buttons here. That's really the way I prefer it. I don't mind touchscreens, but some of the really commonly used items like volume and whatnot should really include a physical knob or switch or something. So negative things, it's not the most intuitive system in the world. So using the radio and changing stations or changing between satellite radio and FM, it took me a bit of concentration to kind of figure out what's going on. So we go to here to audio, we're on the radio. How do I quickly change? Source is over here. Not all the displays or not all the screens display the source. You can get buried in different menus that look approximately the same but aren't really the same. There we go. And it's not always easy to find your way back and forth. So some things like with satellite radio, and you have all of these different channels, it'd be nice to have an easier to use list. There, it's a little bit sluggish there, but I have a lot of real estate here. You should probably put a little bit more of this list in here, a little bit less of the current station. But overall, it's not a bad system. Personally, I think it's definitely better than some of GM's other systems, like you'd find in the Cadillac's EQ system. But maybe I need more time to get used to it. But it's not my favorite system, and it's not the benchmark in terms of usability and intuitiveness. But overall, it's got a lot of features. It looks good. It shows you a lot of information, so it's pretty good. Cluster display here, a couple different layouts, which frankly don't have all that much difference between them. We can go to a classic, we can go to a modern, we can go to an enhanced, but it's just a bunch of different ways to show us basically the same information. If you're going to go through that much and offer customizable or configurable displays, I'd like to see some actual gauges or some more variation in what can be customized, because there's a lot of potential in these configurable clusters, and we could see a little bit more difference in the different modes or configurability, because it isn't there right now. Driver assistance systems are, I wouldn't say lacking, but they're definitely not. It's not equipped with the latest and greatest. So you do have a lane keeping assist, but the cruise control system is just a conventional fixed speed cruise control system. There's no radar assist or radar, autonomous capabilities of this vehicle. Steering weight is pretty good. It's not too light. It's on the firm side of what I would consider normal for a regular passenger car. Feeling isn't that great. It's a bit rubbery. It's hard to tell if it's the fully electric power steering system or, these balloon tires on this thing, these low rolling resistance tires, certainly aren't doing it any favors in terms of steering response and feedback. So it's not bad, but it's certainly not what I would call engaging. Handling's pretty good though. Body control is pretty good. Overall damping of the suspension is pretty comfortable, but still feels decent in the corner. You really feel that low center of gravity and that substantial nearly 1,000 pound weight of the battery pack at the very bottom of the car. So it has this interesting feeling that you can tell it's a heavy car, but it still feels buttoned down. It doesn't feel top heavy. It doesn't feel like it has a lot of body roll. So electric cars, especially when they're built like this, they kind of have their own feeling that you have to drive to really understand. It feels similar to a Tesla in that regard. You can hear that instant torque overwhelm the front axle. I just gave it a little bit of extra accelerator pedal mid-corner, and it was enough to engage the traction control. Another ergonomic topic. Chevy has put a whole bunch of switchgear here on the wheel, and personally I think that might be going a little bit over the top. I don't need all of this stuff. I just need some basic controls for your typical volume settings, your typical selection if you're going up and down somehow in the infotainment system, maybe cruise control. But it seems like it's maybe a little bit more than what's necessary at the steering wheel level. Given the shape of the car, the outward visibility is quite good. You can easily see the different corners of the vehicle. The turning radius is excellent. So the maneuverability of this car is really good. It's definitely a good city car. As I mentioned before, you make up some trade-offs in terms of comfort on this car. I definitely would not be one of the first cars I'd take on a longer road trip for a number of reasons. Not the biggest being the electric range of the vehicle. I think with the 200 plus miles and some careful planning, you should be able to take some road trips with this thing as long as you're careful. But the ride comfort in Michigan anyway, where we know our roads are terrible, it's not the most comfortable car for that kind of driving. Brake pedal, it's okay. The feel of the friction brakes and the engagement between the regenerative braking and the friction brakes can be a little bit spongy at times. But to be honest, for everyday driving, I don't use the brake pedal that much. I turn the regen to max by using the low setting in the transmission, and you can do 90% of your driving with just your right foot. Just your right foot being on the accelerator pedal, that is. And in that sense, it works really well. So Chevy Bolt, what's the bottom line? Well, I have a lot of respect for this car and what GM has done for it. GM has been on the forefront of trying to produce a consumer-grade electric car for quite some time, starting with the EV1 and being an early adopter with the Volt and its extended range concept, and now going from that to the Spark, and from the Spark we have the Bolt. And I think the Bolt is really the most convincing, the most usable, the most polished of the bunch. I've taken all of the knowledge that they've learned from the development side, the engineering side, and the customer, and the user friendliness side, and put that all together in this package here. Could some things be improved? Yeah, I think the overall styling of the car is going to be a little difficult to overcome for some people. Personally, I think I could get over it because the car is really that good. But it's going to be really tough when Tesla comes to the market with the Model 3, and they offer many similar attributes on paper with a styling package that's going to be probably a bit cooler than the Bolt. So I wish GM would have found a way to make the styling a little bit more mainstream without making sacrifices to the usability and practicality of this thing, because let's face it, this thing is as practical as you can make it in the form factor that it sits. The range is good. It's really good. It's to the point where very few people are going to have range anxiety when using this in a normal way. The performance, everything you need from this type of car. In fact, it might even be a little bit much, because it's enough to make people seasick who are not used to sudden movements and gyrations and accelerations. So if you're taking your old granny for riding this thing, just be careful. I can't call it the loud pedal in this thing because it doesn't have an engine, but your right foot's connected to a very responsive pedal that will deliver a lot of torque quickly. So learn to drive this thing smoothly. But in any case, it's very convincing, I think, in terms of what you get for the money. If you're in the market for such an electric vehicle, it's really hard to go wrong with this thing. It really offers an excellent blend of usability, practicality, range, features, and a decent driving dynamic. And I do find it heads and shoulders above other electric vehicles I've sampled, such as the Leaf or Kia's aged Soul platform. I'd be hard pressed competing with a e-Golf myself, simply because I'm more towards the driver enthusiast side. But in terms of practicality, this thing blows it out of the water for sure. So overall, I don't want to get rambling here, but I think it's a great effort by Chevy, and it really shows what fully electric vehicles can be, and there's a great hope in the future that we can have vehicles that achieve all of the performance that we expect from our internal combustion vehicles and still offer the environmental and friendliness and sustainability that you get from an electric car. So like I said, deep respect to the team at GM for bringing this thing together, and it's definitely worth a look. And I'm looking forward to doing some sort of head-to-head comparison once if Tesla ever gets their Model 3 off the ground, because on paper that's promising to be quite the impressive vehicle. But if Elon can deliver on all of his promises and expectations, is a whole nother story entirely. GM has made this car. It's here right now. you need to go check it out. So this is Chris Osberg from Winding Road. Thanks for watching. Feel free to tune in and subscribe. We've got lots of reviews, point of view drives of just about any type of car you can imagine. If you don't like electric cars and hybrids, I'm sure we will be doing a performance car or truck or whatever just around the corner. We've got it all. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune back in, and we'll be bringing more content to you soon. See ya.